I'll ask my questions last. I want to start by thanking all four of you for your expertise and your comedy with with one another and also with the members of the committee. I want to start by addressing some of my colleagues' concerns because I think they do warrant being addressed. If I understood the concerns earlier in this hearing, it was kind of two-part. Number one, they want an investigation into what Russia did, and they would prefer that that investigation be public. I'm sure some of my colleagues are aware of this, but for those who are not in Congress, those who may be watching, those who may be reading, I spent the better part of 2017 in a skiff interviewing more than 70 witnesses on what Russia did to this country. And I get that some of my colleagues want every single committee of Congress to look into the fact pattern, including the Small Business Administration Committee, including Natural Resources. They want every committee of Congress. But the reality is, given the sensitive nature of this information, that investigation is best handled in a confidential setting, which is where the House Intelligence Committee meets. It's where we met for the better part of 2017. It's where the Senate Intelligence Committee is currently meeting, and they will issue a report. And it is not lost on me, perhaps it won't be lost on our four witnesses. There have been a number of references this morning to the indictments that have been issued by the grand jury in the Mueller probe. Anyone sit through the grand jury proceedings? Anyone got a problem with the fact that you didn't sit through the grand jury proceedings? Anyone sat in on any of Bob Mueller's interviews? Any of you have a problem with the fact that you haven't sat in on any of Bob Mueller's interviews? Everything can't be done in public. We had the most productive classified briefing, I think, that I have ever been part of last week. I really wish my fellow citizens could have participated in it. I wish they could have heard what Inspector General Horowitz told both sides, not just this committee, but also Judiciary. Because if you heard what he said, you would not view this as a partisan issue. You would view it as the United States of America was attacked. So I hope at some point the light of day can be shown on all of what happened in 2016. But I just caution my fellow citizens, they do not have any issue with the fact that in every one of their local jurisdictions, somewhere, some investigation is being done confidentially. Whether it's a grand jury, whether it's deliberations by a petit jury, whether it's deliberations by an appellate court in their state, and they don't have a problem with the fact that certain things are done in confidence. And when it comes to not tipping off our adversaries as to what we know and how we know it and what we are doing to guard against it in the future, if there's ever an argument for things to be done in confidence, I think that is the best argument. Having said that, Madam Secretary, I do not know when you became the Secretary of State. So let me start by asking, in 2016, were you in your current position?
No, sir, but I was the county clerk in the largest county in New Mexico.
All right. Well, it would not be fair for me to ask you this question, but to the extent you have any information, I do want you to weigh in. I never really understood why Jay Johnson was criticized in 2016, the former DHS Secretary. I mean, elections are predominantly state and local matters, and the notion that he, as a federal cabinet level official, was supposed to summarily decide to inject himself in the 2016 elections, I don't think was fair to Jay. But there was a decision made in January 2017 to declare our election infrastructure a critical infrastructure. Can any of the four of you address why the decision was not made in the fall of 2016, but it was made in January of 2017? Not all at once.
That predates my time at the department. I'll just add, though, that the way I look at election infrastructure, it is a national critical function. It is essential to the functioning of this government, and the Department of Homeland Security will continue to support state and local governments.
I guess the reason I started off by saying I really wish, I mean, I get that the other 364 days out of the year we're gonna quarrel about who should be elected. I would like this to be the one day that we just quarrel about making sure the person who is elected actually serves. So we haven't had hearings about what President Trump discussed with Vladimir Putin, just like we haven't had hearings about what President Obama discussed with Vladimir Putin while the hacking was going on in 2016. We've had no hearings on that. Madam Secretary of State, final question, because I'm out of time. There are a lot of ways to count votes. The Senate does it. You have to show up in person. The House, you have to show up in person, but you use a voting card. My wife is a first-grade school teacher. They use a combination of raising their hands and voice vote based on decibel rather than people. So there are a lot of ways to vote. What, in your judgment, is the safest, most secure way to vote, even accepting that our friends in the media may not know within 45 minutes of the polls closing who won? If you're interested in making absolutely sure it is safe, secure, and therefore reliable, what is the safest way to cast a ballot?
So it's important to emphasize that every state utilizes a system that's right for them. And even within those states, some jurisdictions use slightly different systems. So making sure that you're utilizing a system that voters are comfortable with and have confidence in is extremely important. With that being said, in my personal opinion, the use of paper ballots is absolutely critical because you have a paper and a voter verifiable backup at the end of the day. If there's ever a question as to whether your tabulators were tampered with, your election night reporting system, you are always able to go back and reconstruct the election on the back end utilizing that paper system. So that, in my opinion, Mr. Chairman, is the safest and most secure way to conduct an election. But with that being said, every state has security and resiliency plans for whatever system they are using, and every state is absolutely 100% dedicated to making sure those systems are protected.
I know it's a multifactorial analysis. You want to incent people to vote. You want to make it as easy for them as you can. There obviously is a speed element. People don't want to wait 3 weeks to see whether or not they won or lost an election. But in terms of safety, security, reliability, knowing that the person who received the most number of votes actually was elected, in your judgment, at least for New Mexico, that is done with paper ballots?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right. I am out of time, but I was not the only